Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, Made with Love. My name is Heather, and today, or I guess tonight, I am boiling the lamb bone. So 2 nights ago, I had made this lamb for supper, and this is the bone, so we've been eating off of this for 2 days. So I've got all this meat is still stuck to the bone, and so I decided to do what I do with, I've got like chicken or turkey when we get lots of bone, is to boil it. So I've got about 4 cups of water, give or take, I didn't really measure, and a whole carton, so this is 946 mils of the faux broth. I don't have any chicken or beef. This was the last bottle of broth that I have in my pantry, so that's what I'm using. So I'm just going to let this boil. It's starting to come to a boil now, but I also just, while it's doing this, just take my fork, I'm using my tongs right now, but the fork, and just kind of slowly break the meat and get it off the bone. So I'm going to end up making like something like a lamb stew or a lamb soup. It might be more of a soup because of the amount of liquid I put in here. But again, it'd be hard to tell if it's going to be like a soup or a stew until I get all the liquid and then I start adding my veggies. But I'm going to let this boil for quite a few hours. It's already been boiling maybe 2 hours now, and there's still lots of meat still stuck to the bone. So I'm just going to continue to let this boil. So this will not be ready until like tomorrow, probably in the middle of the night. It will finally, I just let it boil till all the meat has come off on its own. But I do find if I kind of pick at it or shake it around so it doesn't get stuck to the bottom, then the meat just comes off that much faster and easier. See, now it's really starting to boil because I finally just turned it up, but it's not going to take that much longer for the rest of this meat to come off. Again, I don't even know what kind of lamb this was. I don't even know what chunk of bone this is. Well, I know what the bone is, but I mean, for the piece of lamb, I don't know meat that well to know what exactly it was called. Because I usually do lamb chops that are already sliced. This would be the first time I've actually cooked a piece of meat looking like this. And usually, with the roast and stuff, don't have that many bones. This one has this big bone. Again, I'm learning how to cook lamb. So I really like lamb when I go to the food court. I like the Greek place, and I always get the, what's it called, the lamb kebabs. So I'm just going to continue to let this boil. I'm just putting the lid on for now. I'm just going to turn it down a little bit because now it's coming to a higher boil. So I'll be back as I just let this boil. Right, so it's been boiling for about another 30 or 40 minutes, and I just went to check on it, and it's now in 5, this big backbone thing is now in 5 smaller chunks. So all the meat is almost off of it. And I'm not quite sure, like I said, if it's going to be a soup or a stew. It just kind of depends on how thick it gets and what I add to this. But I'm just going to continue to let this boil, and I think I'm going to have to add some more water now because some water is really boiled down. So I think I'm going to add another 2 cups of water just for now, and I'll be back as I keep boiling it. Alright, so these are the bones for the lamb. As you can see, by having them boiled for a couple hours, and then I simmered them for about 6 hours, and all the meat has come off of them. So I got these nice big bones, all the meat is off. Anything that was healthy inside the bones, like the bone marrow and stuff, is now be in my soup. So over here, I'm just going to turn this down. I just turned it up to get it back up to a boil again. So in here, I have added a couple cups of just frozen peas. So there's nothing in here. It's just some water, that broth, all the lamb that was on the bones, and then a couple cups of peas. And then to add more flavor to this, I'm going to add some fresh fennel. So I love, like, I can usually find the fennel bulbs, but if I ever find the fennel with the whole, like the top shoots parts here, I love these. These are harder to find sometimes. I'm gonna grab my other knife. Just this knife here. I'm just gonna cut these parts off. I'm gonna leave this fennel bulb for another day, but I'm going to use these parts in this. And I've got this really cool little chopper thing. The first time I saw this type of a blade being used was when Subway had salads, and they were making their salads with one of these tools. So I went and I found myself one, and I say it really does make it really fast to cut through food, chopping, you know, just salads, everything. I do find sometimes these thicker pieces like this and celery can be a little tricky at times just because of the shape of them, because they're kind of hollow. But other than that, once I get them down to the right size where the blades can just rotate and chop. I'm just saying, not everybody's going to be a fan of fennel. I love fennel. I think it was an Asian dish somewhere that I had. For some, I had something with fennel in it. I believe it was an Asian dish. It could have been Indian. I don't remember. But it was someplace at the food court. And I asked what it was because I never tasted anything like it. Then I went and I found the fennel. Now I was going to say, if you don't like licorice, or like more specifically black licorice, you may not like fennel. Fennel has that black licorice type of a taste to it, so not everybody likes it. But I really find that the fennel really adds to the taste of the meat. And some of these pieces just end up being just the right size to just kind of get stuck between the two blades, but I do find it really saves the amount of time I have to chop things. I'm just going to keep chopping this away. I'm just going to let my puppy back in, and then I'll be right back. Right, so I've got my fennel all chopped up here. So now I'm just going to add it into my soup or stew. I'm still not quite sure. Depends on how much liquid there is. If it's going to be a soup or a stew. So I'm just going to add the fennel, and I'm just going to let this simmer for about half an hour just to let all the flavors incorporate. So I will be back in about half an hour. You can just see, I mean, it's not a lot of meat. Like I said, it was just a little bit of the lamb off the bone. So there's not a lot of meat in there, but that's okay because I do have chicken in the fridge. I can always add the chicken that I had cooked for supper last night if I felt that so maybe I'll do that. I think I'll grab the chicken and the potatoes and the carrots that are in the fridge and pour them in here and make a really good thick meat soup or stew. So I'm just going to grab that stuff and I'll be right back. I'm one of those people who I'm making dinner and I'm trying to use up leftovers from a couple nights before, and then I've got other leftovers and I'll see if I can add them in. Now this is just some chicken gravy. So that I'm just going to add in here. Like I said, this chicken and potatoes and carrots were what I made last night for supper. Made the lamb. Now was 3 nights ago for the lamb. So we had the lamb 2 nights, and then last night we had chicken. One big piece of chicken. It still got the bone, so I'm just going to set that aside and I will get the bone off. I'm going to use this spoon here. I'm going to get the carrots and the potatoes out of here. Now those potatoes and carrots were from a couple days ago when I first made the lamb. Like I said, I like if I can make a couple dinners in a row and then somehow incorporate all the leftovers into one big dinner. My cutting board here. I'm just gonna take the chicken off of this bone. Just like a chicken breast or something, whatever it's called. But it had the, whatever it's called when it's still got a chunk of the breastbone in it. I'm just gonna set this part aside. Now, sometimes I would, if I hadn't already added the veggies, if I was gonna add this when I was doing the other bones, I would have this in here to boil, but I'm not gonna worry about that. Oops. Another big chunk of bone and fat here. This is the wrong knife, but like I said, sometimes I just grab whatever knives are easy to grab. I'm just gonna chop this chicken up a little bit into a few smaller pieces. So I've got a bone. I think that's a chunk of bone. I don't know. I will double check that that's not a bone, but at this point I'm not too worried. And this is this big hard skin here. And a big piece of fat stuck here. Oh, that's a chunk of bone in there. I'm just gonna pull the skin off because I don't want to put the skin in my stew. So I'm just gonna take this little bone out, and then the rest of the skin and this big chunk of fat can go to my puppy. There. She's waiting so patiently while I'm cooking. The wrong knife for doing this. I just need to slice these a little bit smaller so that these can get, cooked down a bit. I'm going to turn my heat back up to a high, and I'm just going to have this come back to a boil for about half an hour, and then I will be back to show you the final product of, I guess it's a lamb chicken stew now. All right, so I've had it on the high until it boiled, and now I have it on a simmer. It's been simmering for quite a while now. I'm gonna turn it off because I'm gonna let it cool down to put back in the fridge for tonight's supper. But here we go. So this is lamb chicken stew. Look at it. I love the way it's smelling. And it's just gonna keep smelling better as the fennel, lets its flavors go. You can see good chunks of the lamb. If I can get a piece out here without all the other veggies, but you can see the chicken's the light meat, the lamb is the darker meat, so it's got a good amount of meat. See if I can get a better scoop of this here. I'll hold it like this. You can see the good amount of lamb, the good amount of chicken, the carrots, the peas, the fennel. And because I had mashed potatoes, my potatoes mostly went mushy or like liquefied. That's okay. You'll get the flavors of the potato in there anyways, even if you don't actually see. I mean, I've got a few chunks of the potatoes, but for the most part, the potatoes are not even visible. But again, it's okay. It happens when you add mashed potatoes instead of whole potatoes to your stuff. Like I said, again, it just adds to the thickness. I'm gonna try, but it's just so hot. My fingers are burning because the bowl is just so hot. It is so good. It is so good. I mean, I can't wait until it cools down, and then you'll really get the flavor of the fennel. Right now, I'm not really tasting the fennel unless I take a big chunk of fennel. So fennel is still like crunchy, which I do like when my fennel is still a little bit crunchy. But in a super stew, I like it to be a little bit softer, more like the carrot softness. So it's really good. I've added no salt and no pepper to it. I'm one of those people who, when I cook, I usually avoid using a lot of salt and pepper because my husband will always add his salt and pepper after, and so do my kids. And so that was one thing. Making food for kids, they don't really want the salt and peppery taste. And then adults, they can always add some more if they need it. I know some people find that rude to add spices to, salt and pepper to taste. I prefer it if I just make it for everybody, and then at the end, everybody looks it up if they feel they need a little bit of salt or a little bit of pepper. I even find that myself. Like, I'll make something like this, and I don't add any salt or pepper to it. Say today it tastes good, but say tomorrow I might need a little bit of salt or a little bit of pepper added. So that's why I always like recipes like this, leaving the salt and pepper out. Only because I know that, when I did this lamb today, or I guess it would have been last night when I started it, I used that faux broth, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of salt in there. Just have little chunk of fennel stuck in the side of my cheek. Okay. So that is what we're gonna have for supper tonight. Like I said, I made the lamb. We had the lamb, potatoes, and carrots for 2 days. Then last night I made the chicken, and to finish up the potatoes and the carrots. And then to use up the rest of the lamb and the chicken, potatoes, carrots, and the gravy, I made a new big pot of stew out of it. So again, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's subscribing to my channels and watching my videos, and I'll see you in the next ones. Bye.